My name is Odrek Rwabuogo, and I chair a committee called the Presidential Advisory Committee on Exports and Industrial Development. And that's what I do. So let me just tell you, I don't like the word potential. It has been used about Africa, Africans, African institutions, African economy. We always have potential. But a man or woman should arrive in the room and they say, I'm here. Potential not actualized is wasted opportunity, because the cost of money is counted in what value it gives you today, times if you saved it, what it will generate as investment capital tomorrow. So for me, I know that there are some actions that have taken place in the last couple of years. So take the year 1962, forget 1945, I was saying from 43 to 49, this product was a highly political crop because you needed to set up cooperatives, and those cooperatives of farmers demanded processing. The same argument we have today, the late Ignatius Musazi and others, this is what started the move to independence. They were saying, why is the roasting, the hulling, the management of this strategic crop only left to Asians and not us? And they said the same of cotton. So that's what began the Capel riots of 1949. And coffee has not stopped being political ever since. But here's the point I wanted to make. Some changes have happened and you need to recognize them. From 1962, when we became independent, to around 2014, we stagnated around 3 million 60 kilogram bags. That's a lot of time, but very little change. But from 2017 to date, we are now at around 8 million 60 kg bags. What has happened? Some interventions in the sector has pushed production. So the next set is not to reduce production. We need to harvest more kilos per tree. From the tree you have, you can augment production. But on top of increasing 60 kilogram gunny bags to 12 to 20, what we want, we should now add value. And this word value addition is pretty much confused, because you can add value at all levels. There are various segments where value is created, from the farm to the cup. So those value creation channels and steps, some of them is what PACEID is trying to disrupt, to do things differently. So last year, you as a country produced, I think, around 350,000 metric tons total, Robusta and Arabica. That's your 8.5 million 60 kilogram bags. Of that 350 something, 290,000 is Robusta. That's 83% of our total production. Robusta comes from everywhere, Masaka, Luwero, Ankole. The balance of 17% comes from Arabica, which should be premium coffee on high altitudes, Kasese and Elgon, Kasese, Rwenzori and Elgon, and a few other places. That's your total production. But of all that 351,000 metric tons, you exported 99% green beans. You really, in the value chain, retained very little. Much of the value was extracted out of the country. Now, and this is very interesting to me. So you've exported 351,000 metric tons. How much are you consuming as Uganda? You consume, according to UCDA, I need to check these numbers, you consume about 31,000 metric tons, right? So you consume 10% of your total production. But where is that consumption product coming from? 97% is imported. And somewhere around 80% of what is imported, it's junk coffee called Nescafe. It's produced by Nestle in various factories around Europe. So just for you to understand, you have 6 countries in Europe that take 86% of all green beans. 6 countries host 10 roasters. In between those 10 roasters, they retain $55 billion worth of value. So in Uganda, we say, Simba wakati yao. That should really keep people awake. How can we have a strategic crop that we don't consume, first of all? So, if you take your total importation, 97% coming from out of the country, but you've exported 99% green, it tells you 2 things. First, there is an opportunity at home. When we roast, when we have ready-to-drink coffee, and there is a very deliberate strategy to ensure that our upcoming young people drink coffee, you don't even need to struggle with markets outside. You may not get a higher price, but the advantage of you producing and selling in country and in the region is great. And I'll be talking about later on this. So I wanted to demonstrate on this blackboard for us what we think the interventions we are making would help. So just so people can have a sense of what we do at PACEID, because to get the context of something is to help someone understand what you do and how you do it. So we're making 4 interventions. The first intervention is on the market level, and we say that the market is a very strategic area where you get in with a plan. You don't just get your coffee from the field, maybe just if you are even able to roast and ground. And what I'm saying is for bananas, is for cotton, is for many other products. And just show up at the market. The market has barriers of entry. And those barriers have been created by generations and generations of work by other people. So Germany alone, I'm told they have more than 16 high-level roasters of a very high-level magnitude that have set their structures that for you to enter, you need to be smart how you do it. So the market for this advisory committee, we study it, we do dipstick research so that we stop blind trade. We insist that you must have a trade representative. A trade representative is a man or woman who lives in that country, who wakes up in the morning and checks supermarket shelves and tells you, Colombia coffee is doing very well here. How about Uganda coffee? He also knows the local media. He works with the local media to drive the understanding of market tastes and preferences. This is the first intervention we make. Quickly, when you have a market, it demands a particular standard, and you have to comply with that standard. So many of you may not know that we have struggled over a long time as a country to have standardized laws and regulations for food safety. Your food should inspire confidence and trust that when I eat it, I can trace it to the source. To do that, you need culture change. You need for people to grow food with the intention of selling it to another person, but ensuring that that food is safe at home. So we are working on laws, rules, regulations, setting up an authority with the Ministry of Agriculture to house a standards body so that we can say chemicals, animal feeds, the beef you eat, the fish you eat, the chemicals that you use, pesticides, all those things can be traced and standards are enforced and you comply. That's the second intervention we make on the market, because the market is asking you for institutional change. If institutions don't respond to the market, you've wasted time. You've done a seminar and you've gone back to sleep. And you can imagine how many of those we've done in 30 years. and there's no follow through. The third intervention we are making is called infrastructure that supports exports. You know, I need roads in Sironko. I know how hard it is to come from a sub-county in Sironko called Wusedan, with all sorts of lack of bridges, lack of roads, to get a truck of Arabica into Mbale. So I have to balance the necessity of having, let's say, oil roads in Hoima with the necessity for having roads that function in Mbale to get to the market faster. But even if I have roads in Mbale, it's important that you understand that your shipping charge, your logistic charge, is one of the highest in the world. It costs us $1,800 to take a container to Mombasa. That's not what it costs Colombia to deliver coffee into UK. It's different because they use water. So you need to disrupt the way we think about logistics and transport. Have more vessels on Lake Victoria and Lake Albert, first of all, to take our cooking oil, to take certain products to Congo, which we produce. Do not use a 1,500 horsepower engine to take salt, cooking oil across Congo. You need a vessel to lessen the unit cost. You need Uganda Airlines to understand this because they have cargo space. They also bring tourists who will sleep in Sheraton and eat eggs and eat beef and drink milk. They are affecting agriculture, but they are tourists. So infrastructure that supports exports includes labs that function. It includes research and science that functions. It includes aerodromes and airports. It includes vessels. Who stops Uganda from having a ship at Mombasa? East African Community in 1967 had a ship. All of us would put our flags and take our products. We have retreated from the market, and the competition has occupied these places. Let me not take a lot of time. The fourth intervention we make is export credit funding. So what do I do if I have found a market and I comply and the infrastructure is available, but I don't have fuel in the engine? Fuel in the engine is to get cheap money to help those who have gotten invoices. In all these markets we go to, people get orders. I cannot compete with China sending plastics to Uganda at 1% interest. And by the time I send my coffee outside, I'm charged 19%. That mismatch is dangerous. It cannot allow our companies to scale. These four interventions, let me apply them on coffee so you can see our thinking. And so therefore, a coffee tree in Mbale, let's take Sironko. First of all, you need extension services. You need people who can go and teach others how to grow the coffee. Just because I'm a cattle farmer, it doesn't entitle me the knowledge to know how to rear a cow that gives me 30 liters. I need help just as much as a coffee farmer does. You need to have some sort of fertilizers, and these fertilizers are not applied only when the tree is a seedling or when it is grown. Sometimes we apply the same NPK for a seedling and for a grown tree, which is wrong. It's like you at young eating a child's food. It doesn't make sense. Or giving a child grown-up meat, food. So anyhow, you need fertilizers. If you can increase the yield at each of the trees, for me here, there is some work that has to be done. Very important, because this is our strategic asset. And therefore, if you have a strategic asset and you want to create efficiencies, I may not plant even more trees, but I could get more kilos. What's our average kilo per tree now in Uganda? I need to check. I bet it's not more than 700 grams. What's the average tree yield in Brazil? 3 to 5 kilograms. So I can increase at this level. So let's call this Stage one. Stage two, you have transportation. Remember the story of Busedan? So there are some young people that require 10-ton trucks. Very well done. Once the yield is good, the drying is good, the sorting is good, they need to transport. So there are some jobs for young people here. Okay? Now, in the transportation, there are people who have gunny bags. This is an industry of its own. You remember, you are tracking quality to get to the level that you serve a consumer. Now, I could set up a restaurant or businesses in Mbale after I've come down from the mountains and insist that some people should learn to drink coffee because it's grown in Mbale. You know why they don't drink it in Mbale? Because Mbale is full of Nescafe. Those beautiful Elgon hills that give us the best Arabica in the world, down in the cities, they are pumped with Nescafe. So my strategy here is, suppose you remove tax on things like what you call office and restaurant coffee machines, right? Because I have just brewed my coffee here in the office, but I brewed 2 cups at home. When I go to my farm, I have a brewing machine. When I go to my business in Port Bell, I have a brewing machine. In fact, I have like 6 brewing machines. I never take instant those coffees from outside. So suppose you remove a tax. And you know what the tax is? You have withholding tax on those machines. You have import duty on those machines. It totals up to around 50%. If I remove the tax here, I would have more machines and I would encourage young people to drink coffee. But let me move. Stage 3 that the president is talking about is roasting at home. Okay? So let's go back to our numbers. You have produced 292,000 metric tons of Robusta. Okay? Suppose just I take of this 40,000 metric tons. This is what just one company is taking to Serbia, Slovenia, Croatia. You know that whole place we were in southeastern Europe. There is one company that delivers this, not from Uganda, but from all over the world. They have no reason to come to Uganda. You must incentivize them with, oh, you know, Ugandans drink coffee. And so we're trying to speak to the president and government to look at this domestic side. But I want to come to this roasting because that's where the controversy is. So our strategy is that, remember, I told you that we approach the market differently. We appoint a trade representative. We set up a trade hub. A trade hub is a place where you go and know the taste profiles that come from Uganda coffee. You look at the screen, you see people climbing Mount Rwenzori. It's a very exotic place you want to visit. You take nice coffee, you ask questions, you pique interest. But there's someone who's watching you who says, do you want to visit this country? Do you want to know more about Uganda? Now, that trade hub, we now want, struggling very hard to attract this 40,000 metric tons importer from Europe. Why Europe? Because just because you have coffee in Uganda, it doesn't mean Europeans will drink it. No, they have been drinking other coffees. You know, if we come off our high horse as Ugandans and know that in the scheme of things, we're among 7 billion people, nobody cares where you are. You need to be humble and learn and listen, but don't be hopeless. You know, the sense of helplessness which I see. Think through what you're going to do. Now, I want to attract this 40,000 man and say, give me 20,000 metric tons from Uganda. What will I do? I'll give you tax incentives to bring in machines so that you can manage produce for the domestic market. And then of this 20,000, I want to ask him for, you roast 20% for me, okay? roast it in Uganda, and we say roast and ground in Uganda. What's 20% of 20,000? Somewhere around 44,500 metric tons, right? Do you know our total roasting capacity today? It's less than 1,500. I actually think it's less than 1,000, but the figures are not very clear. For a country that has come from 1,500 to get 4,500 roasted in country, and guess what? It goes in his distribution system. I am not trying to put Uganda because they will kill you if you go with your Uganda signs and put them on the shelf in Europe. Their names I don't want to mention. International companies will just scream you off. You mean nothing. Huh? I must go with him. So he puts his company brand behind. He puts for me Uganda Connect. So when I buy a pack of coffee, I will see a Tiang coffee, but behind, man, there is a picture of a gorilla. There is Uganda. That's very important because you have now disrupted the market without knowing that you are coming on the market. Secondly, you have removed the marketing and promotion charge because you have a trade hub, which government will not give you because they don't have money to do that. Huh? Now, what's this person going to ask you? Because you are not unique, remember? Why should I give you 4,500 metric tons into my distribution chain with your logistic charges high, with your tree problems, remember? I have to tell him, look, I will do the following. I will remove the tax on packaging material. Packaging material comes from China. We apply 50% tax on it. But now I will remove it for you. By doing that, I have incentivized you to give me 20%. Okay? Now, secondly, I will give you the traditional things we do, land. But more importantly, I will also allow you to bring in office coffee machines that make espresso, but you don't do it alone. Bring a consortium of other coffee companies. So when we speak of that consortium, we're not speaking strength. We are telling Ugandans, learn how to work together because many of you are selfish. You think you can carry your coffee into Sweden? Zero. They will not allow you in. You must go through structures. Now, what's the other thing I incentivize him with? I go to his country behind him. I negotiate tax-free entry of his coffee with his signage back into where? His country. And that's what we're trying to do next month with Serbia. We have 4 ministers arriving and want to negotiate a comprehensive product entry agreement, right? Now, so if I've given you just those 3 things, now you're going to say, you know what? Let me bring here some good roasting capacity. Let me do a trial run at 20%. Because people are drinking coffee, I also have incentives to take it, but they are not also pushing me to put their logos. I still retain my ability and brand. Now I can increase from 20 to 30 and to 40 and to 50. In the next 5 to 10 years, you would have more of your product grown in Uganda, roasted in Uganda, drunk more in Uganda, but also other markets know about you. So for me, this is strategy number 1. Maybe just say market approach number 1 that we're telling the president has to be done. Now, I want to come to element number 2 of the strategy, pricing. So you've had $40 a kilo. Yes, even now in the trade hub in Belgrade, our trade rep tells me he's able to sell a kilo at $40. But it is premium Arabica coffee of a brand that is known. right? Now, I told you that Robusta is 83% last year what we produced. Arabica is 17%. Where should you put your effort? It's where you have a majority of the farmers are. Because here, I want the smart, rich ones who are able to do that, but I want to take this commodity and ensure that this is more known, and I apply this strategy, okay? Now, so therefore, if I am able to apply this strategy, I can go to a farmer and say, today you are earning $2.7 a kilo of Robusta. If you allow this company, this is pricing element number 2 of the strategy. If you allow this company at least 5 months of what you call credit period, it will go to the farmer and say, I can now pay you $3.8 a kilo, right? So the farmer is happy, right? But I need credit period for 5 months. Now, those of you watching me, this is a long session, but you need to understand, why is Ruwabogo making a case for what you call, remember the 4 interventions? So among the 4 interventions I mentioned, I said there's such a thing called export credit fund. The value of the export credit fund is that you would give this person 5 months worth of credit period. That's more than 120 days. He will roast, transport, sell, and come back and pay. But who does that? Which farmer will not be paid for 5 months? So you must find another cheaper source of money to pay the farmers so that you let this person have a learning curve. And when I say one company, they could be 5. But if you run 5, you lose. I need to focus on the market, 1 or 2 companies, external roasting here, and then I can create an ecosystem of the good coffee farmers, of Dr. Ian Clark, of Robert Kabshenga, of, I'm just mentioning people's names, of Rubanga Coffee, of Masha Coffee in Kapchorwa. It must be a whole network that ties into this strategy in order for you to make that roastery and market entry feasible, right? So now, if I am able to pay a farm at 3.8, I will deliver this 83%. So let's say this 20,000, which is 20%, which is 4,500 tons, I will sell in Europe at $8.5. Hear me out. Someone is going to tell you a lie that you are going to jump from 2.7 and get me $40 in Robusta in 5 years. You will get there, right? But you must aim at a destination, but start progressively where you are. So for me, I want 40, but first give me 8.5, give me $12, take me to $15. I'm happy, because by the time people know me, I now start to bring in this 17%, because Arabica has much more gains over Robusta, almost 90% gains in terms of value, green, than Robusta. But it's for me a market that I want to let the rich people, the big people focus on, or mix and match, but really work with 83%. So by doing that, I have dealt with pricing at 2 levels. I've given a farmer a slightly better price. I have done roasting at home. I have incentivized a roaster by removing taxes on packaging material. I have now made it attractive to pay consultants to go back to that tree. Remember the tree in Wusedan? And say, now there is a bit of value here. Farmers under cooperatives, so Nandara Mafavi and his cooperative, can now hire very good consultants to work with associations or cooperatives or consortiums, whatever you call it, because there is a strategic 4,500 that must go out. So my brother, to get 4,500 in a year, you must process at least 13 metric tons a day. That's how you narrow down now things. 13 metric tons a day. Today's capacity in many of the 23 roasteries UCDA has, nobody does more than machines that do more than 50 kilograms a day. So it's small. 13 is still small. Newano, you are also still much smaller. So if I am able to disrupt, to have this 13 every day, it means that some work will be done here. Extension services, fertilizers, yield, okay? So I want you to assume that I have done this for 5 to 6 years. I have not suffered huge marketing cost. I have gotten a good price, better price on the international market. Then I can now push to the niche good places where I can sink in $25 a kilo. There's a country in the neighborhood that I know that sells its coffee and another brand. They earn 23, but they must have started at 10. So let's be humble and learn and get to that level. So for me, this is our market entry strategy. Once this works, I can do it for bananas. I can do it for pineapples. I can do it for maize. But I have to be very deliberate, very intentional every day to ensure that the people I'm attracting into the roasting, I don't overburden them, because while Uganda can do 170 types of blends because we have very good coffee, no one in the world knows. In the hotel where I stayed in Belgrade, I asked a lady who was serving me, I was kind of trying all coffees. I said, "Where does your coffee come from?" She looked at, she said, "Bologna." I said, "Where's Bologna?" She said, "Italy." I said, "Italy doesn't grow coffee." She said, "I don't know, but all our coffee, we know Italy." So first get Uganda known. Before you can try and tell us the big stories, you first get in humbly but smartly, and then the price will come up. So the summit we had here for coffee 25, okay. I'm extremely happy that there is attention on coffee by African countries, because if coffee was grown by the North or Western Europe and all value is extracted in Africa, they would have gone to war with us. They would have gone to war just the way they go to war to take oil, just the way they go to war to take uranium. But because we do not have genuine conversations about our strategic resources, everybody who comes in criticizes the one who is trying to do something. And that's the criticism I've faced. So I drink coffee, I don't grow it, but nothing stops me. I'm a producer of milk. This story, I can tell it for milk. So for me to have coffee companies, governments gather in Kampala and say, make this resource a strategic one at Africa Union, that's a gain. It means that we're beginning to speak the same language in understanding, because language shapes culture. Number two, the gain I see there is to say, hang on, the president of Uganda is saying that the industry is 460 billion. All African countries, all coffee producing countries get 25 billion. Uganda gets only 800. But one company called Lavazzo in Britain that signed up with Pepsi Cola so that all distribution of Pepsi Cola coffee is there, that signed with another company called Yum China to take the market, earns 9 billion. One company is earning than all of Africa combined. Now that tells you we are beginning to disrupt the thinking. What value extraction can be done in Africa, Ethiopia, Uganda, Angola, and that can be said for cocoa, can be said for anything. That's a huge gain. I think finally the major gain is that it has left a whole lot of conversation in Uganda. You're here. Everyone has been chasing me. We want to know, what are you guys trying to do with coffee? That's good. So now you look for Wabuogo, you hate his face or whatever he does, but this story he's telling you It's a humble strategic story on how to get to the market. Do not insult him for trying to disrupt business as usual, because he thought through this. He doesn't work alone. You know, I have UNDP. I have the private sector foundation business people. I have private sector consortiums. We are in 13 sectors. Yeah? We've thought through this. We are not saying we know everything, but we know something based on which we can build. And that's what we're working on.